Members of DSRs, hope everybody's doing well and this reaches you safely. I've been out in the field a lot over the past 6 years and talked to a lot of different people about dilution rates, the pH scale, why it's so important, the difference between two different types of degreasers. I just want to give a refresher on that. I think because when we go back to work after this coronavirus, we're going to need to know what we're talking about when we're in the field and educate the others who are not educated. So, want to get started on that. Hold on a second. Oh, sorry. So the pH scale, right? It ranges from 1 to 14. So 7's neutral, 1's highly acidic, 14 is highly alkaline. So when you're talking about different things that you put down in different spots, whether it be the floor or on a surface, it's important to know what the pH of that actual disinfectant or chemical is, because once it's mixed with water, it changes the principle, the chemistry of the actual chemical. So that's why it's so important when you're mixing things to make sure that you're mixing it the right way. I have millions and millions of times, I swear, it seems like nobody knows how to properly dilute a product, or they're over diluting it or under diluting it. Well, on disinfectants, that's regulated by the EPA. So if it says 2 ounces per gallon, it's got to be 2 ounces. It doesn't need to be 3. It doesn't need to be 1. So it needs to be 2. So if you look at that, when you're talking about something that's highly alkaline, you're looking at stuff like bleach, strippers that take wax back off the floor, ammonia, stuff like that. When you're looking at things that are highly acidic in our world, we're talking about things that are like Coca-Cola, coffee, tomatoes, all that different stuff. So it's very important to know the pH scale when you're looking at the chemistry of a certain product, making sure that you're putting it down. You don't want to mix the two together. You want to make sure we're doing one thing and one thing. So when we're doing a floor, that's why you got to neutralize the floor after you put down the stripper. Because once you put that stripper down on the floor, it becomes highly alkaline. So you've got to get that back off the floor, make it neutral again. That's why you keep it wet, so that going forward, you don't have to worry about the floor having residue left on the floor, because that stripper will actually adhere to the floor. So very important to know. I don't know how many times I've been out there also when I've seen people not properly strip a floor all the way out, right? And if you don't strip a floor completely out the right way, you're going to end up putting wax over top of other wax that wasn't stripped, or even stripper that's been left on the floor, and that's going to create a major problem. You're going to have to go back in and strip out again, because you're going to get a haze, you're going to get scuffing, you're going to see all kinds of different stuff. So the pH scale, I'm going to have this in the email that I send you guys, but I just want to make sure that everybody's familiar with the pH scale. When we're talking disinfectants, we're talking about acidic. Okay, we're typically in the quat ranges, so 1 to 7. That's why when we put down on a floor, if you have wax on the floor, that's why we run neutral cleaner on the floor, because it doesn't hurt the floor. Now, over time, it will, because it does have some detergent in it, but it won't hurt it immediately, and it won't cost the BSC or the person whoever put the floor down their job and the time that they put in, because you're just completely messed it up. When we're talking about a lot of different types of floors, you got to make sure you know what you're doing when you're stripping, when you're waxing, when you're disinfecting. So important to know the pH scale. Just a refresher on that. So the other thing I want to go over was dilution control and charts, because a lot of times I see people, they're not mixing it correctly. They're not reading the bottle. There's sometimes on a bottle it'll say 2 parts. Well, 2 parts per what? Most time it'll say 2 parts per gallon. That's a 1 to 64 dilution. There's 128 ounces per gallon. There's also 32 ounces in a quart bottle. So you're talking about typically two different dilutions. You have quarts and you have gallons. So you've got to make sure when you're mixing everything, you mix it correctly. So if I'm talking about quarts, which is a 32 ounce bottle, and it says 1 to 32, I'm putting 1 ounce per quart bottle. All right. But if I'm saying in gallons and it says 1 to 32, well, you're going to put 4 ounces in there, because there's 32 times 4 equals 128. That adds up to be 128 ounces per gallon. So I'm going to leave this with you as well. The most of the ones that you see out there are the 1 ounce to 32 ounces for a quart bottle, 1 to 64, 1 to 128, 1 to 256, 1 to 512. But when you're talking 1 to 512, you're looking at a 16th of an ounce per quart bottle. So it's minuscule, the amount that's actually in there. So you gotta kind of make sure you're doing that. The other important thing about this as well is when you're comparing apples to apples, when you're going against different chemicals out there, you got to make sure that you're competing with exactly what the other person has. If theirs is a 1 to 10 dilution, which is about 2.5 ounces per quart, and yours is 1 ounce, a 1 to 32 dilution, you're highly more effective, and you've got not more effective, but you got a lot more less product going into the actual quart bottle than the other people do. So it's and that can be a big difference in cost. So that's very important when you're comparing apples to apples, when you're looking at different dilution rates. I remember, just a quick story. I drove all the way to Tupelo, Mississippi one time. It took me forever to get there. And I asked I didn't ask the right question. The guy was telling me, "Hey, Chris, why is yours 4 times more expensive?" And actually, in turn, mine wasn't 4 times more expensive. Mine was actually 8 times more concentrated than theirs. So I was actually less expensive than theirs. But I drove all the way to Tupelo, Mississippi from Athens, Georgia to prove that. And by the time I got there, all I had to do was just ask the guy to read the label to me. So it's important to read the label. It's important to know the pH scale. So why are these things important? Again, I just kind of talked about this apples to apples comparison on price. Over diluting and under diluting a product is not the way you need to do it. Some people think more or the glug method is the correct way to do it. That is not correct. They need to read the label. It's important to tell your people you need to read the label and do it properly. Mixing products is not a good idea at all. By any means. Also, when you put something down on a floor, you don't want to put something that's highly acidic or highly alkaline because it can hurt the floor going forward as well. So all those things in mind, make sure that your customers out there understand the differences in dilution rates, and you can educate them on this. And I think it's so important because when you're talking about like a coronavirus, there's all kinds of different dilution rates out there. You have highly concentrates, and you got gallons. You got mixing machines, and you don't have it. Some people are glugging, some people aren't. So it's important to look at the label, and that's really what I'm trying to get at. The last thing I want to talk about is butyl degreasers versus non-butyl degreasers and the way that they work. So a butyl degreaser has been around for a long time, but they're a little bit what word am I looking for? They're a little more caustic. They're a little bit more nasty. They actually took a lot of the butyl out of the food services industry because it contaminates with food, and that's not a good thing. So when you're talking about butyl, typically you're talking about it's a water-based thing that's going to get it's a degreaser, and it's going to get petroleum grease oils off of a surface. And the way a butyl works is butyl goes and eats down on top of the grease or fat or whatever's on the surface, eats it and breaks it up off the top. All right. So then when you're talking about non-butyl, that's almost like a highly alkaline degreaser. All right. So what it's going to do is it's actually going to go up underneath the carbon deposits, and it's going to lift it off of the surface. So 2 different ways. Non-butyl is so much more safe for the human beings than butyl is. But I think it's important to know that the 2 different types of degreasers that people are using out there, you're going to find butyl and non-butyl. I forget the full name of what butyl actually stands for. It's really long. But anyways, I just want to let everybody know that along with butyl, non-butyl surfaces, non-butyl degreasers, you want to make sure that you're not leaving it on the surface too long, because you can hurt aluminum and metals and stuff like that. So just want to give a little quick tip on those few things. If you have any questions, please let me know. But I just think it is so important for us as educators in this industry, when we go back to the real life again, that we educate the people that are not educated. And you guys are the front line of defense of teaching these people the proper ways to disinfect, the proper ways to dilute, and the proper ways to talk about chemicals in our industry. So wanted to thank you for listening to me today. I hope everybody has a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.